Chapter 18. Taming the Drunken Monkey Mind. As consciousness begins its journey towards its true self, it must do the following. First, it must open the human form so it may begin to flow freely through the form. It does this through the medium of asanas. Then, it must learn to use pranayama to control the energy that feeds every cell in which consciousness resides. While doing this, it must begin to clean the mind by adhering to yamas and niyamas. These restraints and observances give rise to self-awareness through the purification of the mind. Each yama and niyama assists in the burning of illusions and the decoloring of impressions. Step by step, it peels back the attachment to all the koshas. Through meditation, it begins to hear itself, remove the samskaras and karmas that have burdened it, and finally be liberated to connect with the universal consciousness, the parent that birthed it and through which it shall connect to all its siblings, all living beings, as well as the infinite knowledge that sits within it. This is the story of meditation. I found Corey laying on the ground on his stomach watching the tiny world pass him by. He allowed them to walk over him and rest on him. They were harmless and less threatened and so focused on their present path. He sat up as I landed on the ground beside him. "They are beautiful, are they not?" "They are," he replied. "And yet so many humans are scared of them. I'm not sure it helps that we have labeled them as creepy crawlies and then developed a story around them that is not the kindest." "Yes. It is an interesting habit humans have, creating all these narratives about nature that allow you to lazily believe that you have no impact or connection to any of us. In your movies and stories, we are often the villain. Our fires, storms, movements, and actions are all the source of terror and destruction to the human. By portraying us in this way, you have succeeded in taking away our voice. You have made us mute, and then spoke for us with ignorance and lies. And why not? As long as you believe that we are the destroyer, that you are not connected to us, you can keep eating us, chopping us down, polluting us, and caging us. Many of us are on your weekly list. Yes, Corey, even in your Amazon shopping. We arrive in pieces at your home, in boxes as fibers, metals, etc. I hope you at least recycle us so your children may grow up with greater odds of survival." Corey lowered his eyes and said nothing. It was okay. He knew I was not judging, just raising awareness in him over and over again of our presence and his existence. "Come, let's go sit with the trees. There is a breeze there, and you will find it easier to stay present in today's lesson. We are now starting to move into the last stretch of yoga, meditation." We slowly made our way to the family of trees and lay lazily among them. Everywhere we turned, there was nature reclined in a meditative state, only half aware of our presence, for they had already begun to turn their senses inward. Influenced by the energy around him, Corey's mind quietened and his being shifted into his parasympathetic nervous system. It was under this blanket of blissful peace that I began the story of meditation. The next limb and first step towards meditation is pratyahara. It is the act of teaching your mind to withdraw from your senses and begin to focus on one thing and to learn to concentrate, to establish peace with the mind. This cannot be done through running, swimming, or any physical act. It can only be accomplished by sitting and doing nothing. This is where yoga truly begins to challenge you because of the nature of the mind is to constantly move and be rajasic. Ever notice when you sit in silence and observe your mind, how many different and varying directions your mind goes? And how rarely the place your mind goes to is inside of you, unless you are in pain or beating yourself up. Ever observe how you spend hours running around in your mind, chasing a monkey who's high on speed? It mostly goes to places that are way beyond your control. It constantly shifts, and more often than not, it is trying to figure out what someone else is thinking. As you well know, it is impossible to know what another person is thinking. I'm not even sure the other knows what they are thinking or if they're just reacting. See how exhausting and pointless it all is to focus on that which is beyond your control? The first stage of meditation is pratyahara. By definition, this is the process by which you begin to withdraw your senses from the objects that pull your senses towards them and then creates an attachment to them. For example, your sense of taste creates a desire to eat and then develops an attachment to food by adding the term I like or I dislike to it. Therefore, in the practice of pratyahara, you are starting to teach the mind to concentrate. Bring all the senses under control and enter the journey of true introspection. Remember that the role of your senses is to provide proof that there is an outside world. If all your senses were switched off, you would be left with darkness, space, and silence, with only your awareness to guide you. So basically, you would be left connected to the soul within you. So when a sense pulls you to something to satisfy yourself, you respond to it by saying no, thereby gaining mastery over it. Seen this way, you begin to understand that your senses are what seek to constantly separate you from the universal consciousness, even though there is no difference between the individual and the universe, and you are, in fact, in the middle of it. True freedom, Corey, comes from mastering the mind and the senses. When you first start the practice of concentration, it is your senses that agitate and constantly prevent you from focusing on the infinite space in which we all exist. This is why so many of you struggle with meditation. You have not first learned concentration. Now, Corey, let me make this very clear. What most of you humans are doing at this stage is concentration, not meditation. All those apps that you think you are using to engage in meditation are in fact trying to teach you to concentrate on one thing to quieten your mind. The transition to meditation occurs when your concentration on one object is so deep that you lose all awareness of time and space. When you dream at night, you travel, experience things, feel things, and exit your bed as you enter a different realm of consciousness. Here, you experience things physically and mentally that are not really there at all. It is the same in your waking state. You perceive things that are not there because they are a construct of your mind. Only when you wake from a dream do you know it is a dream. Only when you are able to withdraw from your senses and wake from the dream called life do you realize that life is merely an illusion created by your mind, and that the truth lies beyond your mind. Pratyahara, therefore, is the first step toward your awakening from the illusion called life, because everything is vibrating energy. Reality is merely how your mind perceives and structures that energy. Remember the story of the tire and how it is defined by who is looking at it. Have you got a headache yet? I squawked out loud in my eagle laughter. I understand for many humans this is a hard concept to grasp. And yet these days it is not only gurus, Sufis, Buddhists, and monks speaking this language, but also neuroscientists, doctors, and physicists are beginning to participate in this same conversation. There are many methods to pratyahara, but before you embark on them, there are some preconditions that must be met through the practice of niyamas, asanas, and pranayama. Your feelings and emotions should be sattvic. Your heart must be open, as it is not only your mind, but also your heart that must engage in meditation, and your intentions must be pure. When you first start this practice and you are so focused on your senses and their removal, your senses may become heightened, overactive, and very sensitive as they fight you not to be shut down. Remember, the more attention you give something, the more power you offer it, the more it will remain with you. As it is often at this stage that humans give up and descend back into the illusion called life. In the wise words of that splendid human Buddha, let me share this with you. Everything is transient, and yet, to the senses, everything seems to be permanent, which means that they cannot see reality. The same water does not flow in a river at any given spot. everything is merely the motion of parts of something greater made up of jumping and skipping particles. Every cell of the body constantly changes, every atom of matter vibrates. Everything moves to something else. In this world, the only constant is change on every level, but to the senses there is no change and life is never ending. This is why humans struggle to accept death and believe it is something that they can control and escape. They view death from their senses as if the soul is an angel of light and your senses are the devil. Because where your senses really excel is in their want to satisfy desires. Humans live in the illusion that when a desire is met, fulfillment is satisfied. But all it does is fuel more desire for more fulfillment. The consequence of enjoyment is the generation of further desire to repeat the enjoyment. Always accompanying desire is suffering when a desire cannot be fulfilled or achieved, or when the satisfaction of it leaves. Desire is like a fire. The more you feed it, the more it wants. This quote says it all. Never is desire extinguished by the fulfillment of it. It is your never-ending desire for pleasure that gives rise in you for your fear of death, as well as to possessiveness, jealousy, and that star player in your life, suffering. You humans really need to put that player in the penalty box. But something else much deeper than emotional insanity happens when you let your senses run amok. You create subtle psychic impressions in your subconscious mind. You create new samskaras and karmas. When you first start this process of one-pointed focus, the desires of your senses show themselves to be the greatest magicians of all. There are times where you will think, I have tamed desire. But really, it is just lying low because maybe there is nothing to inspire it, or maybe it is frustrated and exhausted and just taking a break. All the while, desire continues to scheme to create a circumstance in which it may rear its head again. When you are with us in nature, at a monastery or at a temple, desire loses its strength and gives you the false impression that you have conquered it. Or it hides in depression, sadness, joy, or anger. Desires are sneaky buggers, because it is in this state you blow the flame of desire to get you out of those low emotional states or to sustain a high. Then there are moments when you once again think you have out-tricked desire only to find that the lack of desire for an external object has subtly been replaced by an attachment to it by engaging in fantasy and visualization to enjoy it in your mind. Or you have merely substituted desire for one thing with another. You humans are forever playing hide and seek with desire. When you start this journey of training your mind, the journey is fraught with so much turmoil that your senses rebel. You feel lost and empty and despair creeps in. When this happens, you find yourself asking, what is the point of life? What is the point in engaging in a series of experiences that often leave you yearning for more? These feelings will lead to unease in your body and manifest as lack of sleep, indiscriminate eating practices, and an overall feeling of lethargy. These occur as you seek to channel prana where it does not want to go, to control a mind that does not want to be controlled. But there are also moments of great joy that well up from within you when you least expect it, that remind you why you are on this path. Think of every training you have ever begun and how the start was always challenging. There was nearly always a moment when you just wanted to give up, but something in you pushed you forward. It is the same with pratyahara. Your mind wants you to give up, but if you listen carefully, your soul will propel you forward. The best way to start concentration is with the external, and this may surprise you. We have spent months telling you to remove your focus on the external and move inward. But here, the external has a benefit in that it provides a focus for your mind. Here are some examples of exercises for external focus. Sit for a period of time and study yoga, allowing your mind to concentrate on the study. Sit and listen or read this book with full concentration. Basically engage in one act at a time and be fully present in that one act rather than doing several acts at the same time, or doing one act but thinking about another. For example, if you are washing a dish, be present in the whole act of washing it. Feel the water over your hands, feel the pot as you wash it, and basically be present in the very moment that is your life. There is joy to be found in every single act you do. You do not constantly need to be stimulated to feel great bliss in your life. You can also begin concentration with meditation beads and chanting a mantra as you move from bead to bead, giving your senses a focus. The candle meditation that we did the other day is also very useful, as it allows you to gently shift from the external to the internal. As you light the candle in a darkened room and place it on a stand, keep your eyes wide open as you stare at the flame without blinking. When your eyes begin to water, close your eyes and focus on the image that appears between your eyebrows. Hold on to the image, and only when it disappears as you have lost concentration, open your eyes and start again. From here, you can move on to focusing on the internal with visualizations. This is done by closing the eyes and focusing on a chakra, the light between your eyebrows, or an object placed in your heart, such as a lotus flower. When you have reached the point where you can concentrate on one thing comfortably over a long period of time, then you have reached the second stage of meditation, dharana. We shall get into this at our next meeting. But before I end today, Corey, allow me to give you some homework on which to concentrate. Before you start every contemplation or meditation, enact these 3 principles. Enter into it with want for nothing. Acknowledge that you are nothing, that in this moment you are none of your roles or labels. And commit to doing nothing, to just be. As you enter into silence, your mind will seek to go anywhere and everywhere except into silence. That is okay. Instead of resisting, observe your thoughts with honesty and no judgment, knowing you are not your thoughts nor your emotions, for as long as that you are not your thoughts nor your emotions that for so long you have defined as your personality. When witnessing your thoughts, ask yourself if the thought is useful or harmful to you. If it is harmful, take a moment to try and understand its origins. Observe the habits of your mind and the places it constantly seeks to go. These are mental habits you have created. Instead of sustaining the habit, let that thought stream go or transform it into a positive mental thought. For example, repeating a mantra such as I am love, I am enough just the way I am light. The beginnings of this part of yoga allow you to understand your mind and where it wants to constantly take you. Like any machine, you cannot fix it, transform it, or control it until you understand how it operates. When a colored thought rises, a like, a dislike, a lie, etc., try and bring it back to neutral by holding no attachment to it and then letting it go. Ask yourself if the thought is a truth, fantasy, or gossip. Ask yourself if it is yours or was it given to you by another or media. It is only the coloring of your thought with kleshas that keeps you holding on to it. The only thoughts you should hang on to are truths. When your mind pulls you somewhere, ask yourself if it is temporary or something you have attached to as permanent. For example, that you are ugly, fat, or a loser. Also ask yourself if you are mistaking a painful thought for pleasure, as you humans often do with love. You will experience all of the above when you start to observe your mind, so do not panic, you are on the right path. The goal is not to suppress and bury what rises in the mind, but to still it by transforming thoughts back to their neutral state. In doing so, you will be burning the seeds from which they rose by not giving them attention or attaching yourself to them. It is in this way that you begin to gently breaststroke your way around the ocean, known as your mind, neutralizing negative thoughts, burning seeds, and allowing those thoughts that are useful to remain until the ocean that is your mind, in which you swim around all day, is stilled. The small ego stops attaching itself to every thought and impression. The manas, the birds, still, and the waves, the vitris, become flat. The buddhi, the intellect, stops trying to analyze everything and just listens. And thus begins the process of breaking the cycle of karma that lives and breathes off your samskaras. You no longer live in the habit and behaviors that have been grooved into you by repeating them over and over again. Nor do you create new karmas. Because in every moment you enter, your behavior will be guided by yamas, niyamas, and ultimately your consciousness. As you move forward in this journey, you will wake up one day and find that your mind always sits in one of these 4 states. The first will be friendliness at all those that are joyful and are working to move themselves towards light and love. The second will be to have compassion for those who are suffering, for they too have a story sitting in their conditioned mind. The third will be to always have reverence for those who have knowledge and are taking the time to share it with you. And the last will be to have active indifference to all those who are evil and unkind in their actions. I shall end today's lesson on a high. Corey, if you are really aware about what you put into your mind, one day all the seeds that sit at the bottom of your lake, your ocean, that give birth to thoughts will have been planted by you consciously and with awareness, such that witnessing your mind will become a task you look forward to rather than fear. And in the stillness, you will be able to move into the next step of meditation, known as dharana. That was beautiful, Eagle, Corey exclaimed as he moved out of telepathy and back into his voice. Thank you. I actually want to go home now to sit in silence and just observe my mind to know what is in there. It is so much easier now that I understand that my mind is not me. You're most welcome, human Corey. Come, let me fly you out of here, not literally. We would need dragons for that, and who knows, they may just show up one day. Corey looked at me. He was unsure if I was speaking a truth or not, and then he smiled and let it go. He was beginning to understand that nothing was impossible. We turned to give gratitude and love to the cove that was slowly awakening and then slowly made our way back to the life of illusions. How are you doing? I asked Corey. I was hoping he had learned to answer that question with truth rather than the great human response, I'm okay. Well, let's see. There are so many moments I feel joy and peace within me, but when I least expect it, that shifts quickly to doubt and fear. But those moments are becoming less as I am no longer feeding them my attention. But more than that, the fear of never seeing you again when this story is over keeps rearing its ugly head. I know we are near the end, so I desperately want to ask you this. What will happen after the story of yoga ends? I smiled at him, so proud he had been able to articulate his emotions and thoughts. It gets easier, Corey. The mind never disappears, but your ability to control it and live above it grows. The more you surrender to the soul within, the less the external will pull you in all sorts of directions. As for us, I don't have an answer to that. I only know that at this moment we are both exactly where we are meant to be. I have faith that this journey will continue for eternity, in many different forms, each as it is meant to be in that moment. I love your riddles, Eagle. You would do well to write a book on how to break free of a relationship, so it seems as if it is a gift to go separate ways. I know. There is always a gift in all suffering. See? You no longer need me or the cove. The student has now become the master. I laughed out loud, happy at the light that was radiating from within him. That is not true, Eagle. I will always need you. Sorry, I meant want you. No, wait, that is not right either. Because wants and needs are my senses and desires speaking. You know what you mean. You know what I mean. Read my mind, will you? I know what you mean. I feel the same way, but without the fear. We are deeply connected, you and I. No amount of time, distance, or space will ever remove you from me or me from you, because where our connection sits is in each other's hearts.